We are here with Henry Seven Renaud Jr. I am Dustin David Pickering, founder and editor at Transcendent Zero Press. Freedomland Blues is Henry's latest collection, and he is here to talk with us about the poetry as well as the creative process. Henry, please tell me, you spent 10 years authoring this book. And how does it feel for it to finally be into existence? And maybe you could give me some details on the creative process that went into the book.
Well, I now know what a woman feels like when she gives birth to a child, because I feel the same way about this book. It did take me approximately 10 years to put it together. A lot of the poems, well, some of the poems I started as far back as when I was 15 years old. And it's a sort of a blues meditation on America. It points out different areas of America that people, either through denial or neglect or distraction, overlook. You know, reality is way more abundant than our desperation to hold down jobs and, you know, provide for our kids and you know, get an education in this country, all those different things, to really look at what our society is really like. So through the lens of the blues, I figured that I would give America a look into themselves.
So perhaps you could tell me a little bit about the philosophy of the blues and the sensations and feelings you're trying to convey by using the blues as a form in the literature.
I use the blues as a template in this because while most people that I've run into, they think the blues are just plain sorrow songs, you know, someone moaning about how bad things are in their life, when in actuality, among black people, the blues are songs of uplift. You know, it's our way of laughing in the midst of our crying. You know, we look at our lives and the bad things that happen in it, the bad relationships, the, you know, the oppression that we face, the frustration that we face, and we can laugh about it. And in a sense, it strengthens us. It makes us to where we're willing to go on despite the odds. We're willing to endeavor to persevere. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
It's part of the will to survive and human nature. We really struggle, regardless of what kind of obstacles we face. There's a need to live and a need to overcome those obstacles. Maybe speaking of obstacles, you just recently located to Texas out of California. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the cultural differences, especially regarding Texas's banning of multicultural, especially African American literature and studies.
Well, there's a lot of differences that I've found between Texas and California. I mean, to me it seems the main difference is they tend to follow the rules here a lot more than they do in California. And any person who is a logical, reasonable person will know that not all rules are good rules. I mean, we've had a lot of laws implemented within the United States recently that are bordering on a dictatorship or something, and people just go along and follow it. Well, as the recent uprisings in California will tell you, Californians just don't follow all the rules. They don't follow a rule just because it's a rule. They don't follow a law just because it's a law. You know, they will rise up. And here, I mean, they take more of a complacent stance to it. And like I said, I've met a few really good people here, and I've met a couple of really exceptional poets here too. But I don't know, it's a bit much. You know, they're one of the things that they do here, I notice, is the laws that they pass to in effect erase some of the history of the United States, the school books that they're giving the children here. They erase a lot of what happens, and they're looking to do that by taking out the voices of mainly the people who have been oppressed in this country. You know, the Mexican Americans, the blacks, even the Native Americans. And that is sad, because if you don't include the history of all the people that made this country, I mean, you're basically telling a lie. And, you know, the worst thing you could do is tell a lie to your children. The people during the suburbia era, during the 50s, found out about this, because then along came the 60s, and all those kids says, we're tired of your lies. So who's to say that the same thing won't happen here in Texas one day, because somebody has implemented short-sighted laws now that are wrong.
So you've had some history with activism and facing police brutality and pushiness, and maybe you have some kinds of word of advice for Texans who are understanding of the nature of this system of oppression, yet face a complacent majority that will not rise, will not do a thing to fight back. I mean, maybe you have something to offer as a word of advice to somebody who would like to push the difference through.
Well, the thing that I've learned, because I can remember actually being an activist when I was 13 years old, and I've got in trouble with the legal authorities in this country a lot of times. I mean, but the thing is, the main thing that I've found, the key to being an activist is basically the same thing that is the key to being a human, and that is that you have to have a working conscience. I mean, no matter what your religious or political beliefs are, you know, your conscience is actually your soul, and it's telling you what is right and what is wrong. And, you know, just because somebody says, okay, this is the law, and the majority voted for it. I mean, I can't remember a time during my lifetime when the majority of Americans in America have been voting for anything. I mean, you know, each year we look at the voting polls, and less people are making the decisions for more and more people. And the sad thing is, I don't think the vote works now anyway. I mean, the way this country is set up now, it doesn't. I mean, it's all about money running the show. So a person has to decide for themselves what they feel is right and what they feel is wrong. And we're all on this planet, we're all born with a conscience. I mean, we're born with it. And the problem is, we either have it preached, teach, or beaten out of us at a young age. And we grow into the kind of people that, you know, formulate patriot acts and stuff like that, and start telling people that, you know, there's a terrorist on every corner, and start, you know, when they see like the recent brutality and stuff that has been implemented by police against black males here in this country, it's actually no different than 1954 Mississippi. I mean, and people sit back and they look at that, and even if they say, well, it's wrong, they don't have the courage to act. So it's a combination of conscience and courage. I mean, we know when something is wrong, and we know when something is right, you know, and it just comes down to acting. So as long as I live, you know, no matter how old I get, if it's wrong, I'm going to stand against it. And I figure I'm going to get my head bumped a lot of times doing that. But the thing is, other people will benefit for it. And I know more than likely nobody's going to thank me or anything, and I'm not looking for that. It's just when I see, you know, government officials and CEOs and, you know, people who take oaths to protect and serve us instead use those to repress us. I mean, to me, they're bullies. And one thing, ever since I was a kid, I can't stand a bully. I mean, I will go out of my way to bring pain to a bully. So, I will continue to be a thorn in the side of those in this country who want to, in effect, make slaves of people.
And back to Freedom Land Blues, you had an interesting request regarding the publication about the cover and the black page in the front when you first opened the book. You also wanted a red inside cover, but we weren't able to do that due to the printer. But I wondered if you had a concept or a thought in mind presenting that, or if that was just something to kind of shock the eye maybe a little bit, make it think a little bit, something of that nature.
Well, in effect, even a person that doesn't read this book, I mean, even by opening it, basically what I'm saying is black is an integral part of this America, and we will stand out. No matter what comes about, we will continue to be that voice that America will have to hear. I mean, if you're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, and I love my people, and I love them because I know they can be bad just like they can be good. But that's what people have to understand about every group of individuals on this earth. You can't judge a person by their color, their religious beliefs, by their political beliefs, by their gender. You have to judge a person, as Martin Luther King said, by the content of their character. And here in this country, they don't know how to do it. And putting this book together, I mean, it was more than just the words in it that mattered. I wanted the way that the book looked in order to have an effect. I mean, we are this lightning bolt coursing through the center of America. And, I really want people to read this book more than anything. I've donated the book to, here in Texas, to the library. I mean, I'm willing to give it away free. I want people to read it because this book will actually not only help them understand this society they live in, but it will help them understand their self, in the big scheme of things. And I just, I'm very happy with this book. I've tried to find faults with it, and I can't. I really put my heart and soul into it. So get you a dose of Freedom Land Blues.
Right, and it is a very beautiful book. It is very worthwhile to buy. It hasn't really been selling as much as expected, but there are anticipation when you go back to California. There's bound to be a lot of people who will take interest since they're familiar with your work. Maybe you could talk to me about your Hinge Theory, what you've been calling that you use as a technique in writing and composing your work.
Mm-hmm. There's actually another poet who actually brought this up. I can't think of his name right off the top of my head at the minute, but basically you use spaces instead of punctuation in your when you're doing your poetry to signify more of a to signify the body language that a person would use when they are actually saying the words, because most poetry is written from left to right on a poetry page in lines, divided into stanzas. And my poetry, I mean, on some of the poems, they go all over the page. And this is one of the problems I had getting the book published. I mean, most publishers today, their printing formats can't accommodate, or at least, their printing formats can't accommodate the way your text is written on the page. But I didn't have that problem with Transcendent Zero Press. I mean, they worked with me and everything came out perfect. I mean, I'm really happy. But um, this Hinge Theory, I think it has a lot to do with the fact that people say are texting today. I mean, talking over a phone to a person, you're immediately don't have any sense of their body language, and that tells a lot. You can't look that person in the eye, you know. And this poetry is kind of saying this is not just the poet standing there speaking, but you're actually looking him in the eye. You're able to judge, you know, his meaning, his intent by the body language that is you know, given by the way I space it, the way I hang words, the way I overhang certain lines and stuff. But you buy the book and look at it, and I think it will help a person understand the actual, because I wanted this book to be read by the common person out on the street, a janitor, a plumber, you know, a businessman, anybody that reads it, and make it easy for them to understand. I didn't want to simplify it to make them look like, you know, I was dumbing it down for them. The poems are very complex. They make you think on a lot of different levels. And, you know, take a look at the book. If you know, even if you don't buy it, go to Amazon.com. They have a couple of sample pages that you can look at. The book is also available on CreateSpace, and take a look at it. You know, even if you don't buy it. You know, I've always been one. You know, before I criticize or decide that I don't want something, I always try it once. So give it a try.
And just an odd question I would have. You spoke of text messaging, and we've talked personally, aside from the interview, about Tupac Shakur and how his writing is got a pre-text message, text message style. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you thought maybe some people are so in tune with the universe or something outside of us that they can kind of move the language of the culture they live in towards something that's already emerging, you know, kind of a prophetic kind of thing. Like a lot of poets have the power to, in some instances, to maybe abstractly profess the future or show what's going to happen. I mean, like we talked about science fiction and how intelligent a lot of writers can be, and like the pedestrian, and how that's where our culture is going, and you know, things like. Do you have any thoughts on that power that writers have, or do you acknowledge that?
Well, one thing about poetry, it evolves. I mean, from age to age, the poetry has changed. I mean, it used to be a time when anytime you wrote a poem, it had to rhyme, and it had to rhyme in the end. And most of the poetry I see today extends from free verse, which is actually more like a person writing a paragraph, to flash fiction, to the what we would call the avant-garde experimental, where you look at a page and the words are all over the page. I mean, but the thing is, even with like text messaging, it is evolving the way we communicate with each other. So it may well come the day where we are able to say 3 words instead of a whole sentence and be able to convey that entire meaning. We may include, like I was talking about body language earlier, the way a person moves. You know, I know amongst black people, when we talk to each other, people will look at us and say, well, wow, they're really mad at each other, when we're not mad at all. Because one thing I have noticed about our way of talking to one another is body language is half of the message, you know. And it's funny because when I look at people on the television or something, when they're interviewing a politician or something, I always take notice. I really look at the way they move around, the way they, the gestures they move, the emphasis they put on certain words or whatever. because all of those things are telling things about that person.